Holly?
Just woken up.
So they are. You got the keyboard as well. Ooh,
Yeah.
Nice. Did you find much use for it in your world?
Yeah, it's been on, this ARP's been on, it's on the beginning of a track called Plastic, actually. There's like a helicopter sound.
I was going to ask.
And it's that, yeah. It's hard to remember what everything ended up. That was definitely one of them. And we used it on quite a few things, but I think lots of it didn't end up on it. But certainly that helicopter is was from there, definitely. Oh, and also there's a track called Small, which has got kind of a weird cello at the beginning. It sounds like a cello.
I was going to ask about that, because
it's not quite a cello. No, it isn't. It's a patch on here that I used some extra modulation from. These might have moved to somewhere else now. Yeah, I've used some modulation off of the modular stuff to make a fairly complex kind of, and another filter as well to make a much more kind of complex harmonic sound than an ARP can do on its own. It had more modulation and a high pass filter that this doesn't have, and I modulated that filter. I've got the patch written down somewhere, and that was definitely the ARP as well. It's kind of the only thing that would have sounded like that. It just had it's got a beautiful farty sound. No, it's got a beautiful the reverb, yeah. Yeah, the reverb's lovely, and just the warmth of the sound of it I mean, from the speakers is really good. It's just a lovely synth. I love it.
So I noticed you've got a lot more modular stuff. I mean, is that something that you just sort of weren't getting from the hardwired synths? Did you just sort of find that you could?
Yeah, it's a bit like, it's also, it becomes an obsession like camper vans do. And you start to look at all, and once you're in it, and you think, oh, if what's so beautiful about this stuff, this Analog Systems and Dope for stuff and Plan B, is they all work together, and you can, they're the same kind of voltage, and they have, there's the same jacks, small jacks, so there's no adapting. Although I've got a whole big load of adapter stuff going on here that I had built, and CV outs and things to use with the Moog, and I've got an Oberheim as well. And that is an original RA Moog. A lot of it is. The ones that say RA Moog are the very early ones.
Right. That's
the very early kind of holy grail of filters there.
Did you find you use that for a lot of processing?
No, we didn't. It hardly got used. Things we tried lots of stuff. This album took 4 years to make, so loads of stuff was discarded. We did quite a lot of analog sequencing this time, with kind of things blipping along and but we ended up doing it on other things in the end. But I don't know, it's inspirational, this kind of thing. It starts you off in worlds. And what I loved about modular synths is that you could patch things back into themselves, and you could make enormously complex patches, which you can't really do so well on like a mini Moog. It's brilliantly endless, but you haven't got more than one LFO. You probably need two or three LFOs.
I mean, this is something I discussed with Will when I talked to him. How do you protect yourself from overexposure to modular time? Because you get this kind of time warp.
You totally do. Yeah. You can't protect yourself. You just don't switch it on. It's best.
What about the thing about when you get a sound, you're there. Do you live for the moment, or do you kind of think, oh, I better keep that set up?
That's a weird dichotomy there. I like living for the moment. I think that's because I don't really have that many in my live guitar world that I live in. I don't have that many programmable things. I've got some echoes that I can program, but it's really kind of very visceral and moving the knobs and making it happen. And I love all that about that. But I've also got a Moog Voyager that I can instantly click back to a sound that I've made, and it makes a hell of a difference. But I think when you enter modular world, you do live for the moment. And I mean, if you've got an absolutely amazing sound that you're really terrified to lose, I have left it for a week before I've had the courage to pull all the leads out in a frenzy.
Order another set of duplicate modules.
Yeah, that's the proper way to do it, really. That would be the Vangelis way to do it, or the what's his name, the Hans Zimmer way, wouldn't it? Yeah.
So I noticed you've got a couple of slots free there. What's going on? Have you got something to go in there?
There's a big block up there as well. Well, this is like crack, really. It's synth crack, isn't it? There's I need to get on with that. It's the sort of thing that keeps you awake at night. Well, we'll go in there, and how will I rearrange it all? I've had this apart so many times to kind of make it more ergonomic, but actually all you need to do is get longer lead. The VCS3s have been a really big part of our record, actually.
Yeah, there's a lot. Did I detect some reverb processing on some of the vocals with it?
No, that's my old Spring, actually. That and other various kind of. We use a few plugins, but we use my Great British Spring a lot on that. And this is on a track called We Carry On. It's got my old Moog is the bass line.
Signed by Bob.
Signed by Bob, yeah. And the VCS3 is a lot of the bleepy sound and noise. And it's on a lot of stuff, because what is one of the things about this album is the tuning of it. It's got kind of wide tuning, well, out of tuneness, really. And that's been a major part of. Like, I played guitar on something, and my guitar was really out of tune with the track, because sometimes we just start a track and it's not in concert, so it can be a bit of a nightmare to kind of tune, to use an organ that is untunable. You have to vary speed the track to make it fit, but we just start in a kind of flurry of that sounds cool, record it, and the guitar might be like a quarter tone flat from concert. That means nothing else will fit with it, other than tunable instruments. So, and most synths are tunable. So, but I picked up my guitar this day and I played over this track, and it was way out of tune. And it sounded great, and I went, oh god, that's out of tune. Tuned it up, and it didn't sound half as good, so I had to detune the guitar. Like you might listen to old psychedelic records or electronic records where they were struggling with trying to tune the synthesizers, or the psychedelic bands didn't care, like the Stooges. It's out, but it's beautifully in with its outness. It's that thing about, like, if you were to take an acoustic guitar, and if you were into Sting, which I'm not, but if you were, they're so perfectly, and a lot of very high-end pop music is so beautifully recorded. It's perfect. It means nothing. To me, anyway. I mean, to some people it does, but
it's an interesting point, because some people say that to create tension in things you have to have some dissonance, even if it's very subliminal.
Yeah, and that's absolutely, you do, and that's what orchestras have. There's a pitch. It's not perfect. Yeah, exactly, and that's kind of what we're looking at. So the VCS3 is a kind of fairly untunable beastie, and
those vernier dials.
Yeah, you can get it, but it has, and if you use it with a keyboard, which we did on one track, it's just, you can't. It's impossible, which is so beautiful. You can also tune the keyboard to quarter tones, and it's and it has a world of its own. And its reverb sound is lovely and all that, and the filter's lovely. But it's really about the tuning a lot, I think.
Were there any sort of defining pieces of technology that kind of made tracks happen? Yeah,
there is. I bought this Seal keyboard that we use on quite a lot of tracks. I can't remember what it's called now. It cost me 80 quid. And I had it on the floor in here, and we were playing it, and as soon as somebody brought it over for me to buy, to look at, I knew I had to have it immediately, because it sounded great, and that was another defining sound of the record, really. It's the sound of the keyboards on the rip, it's the sound at the end of Machine Gun, the strings. Is
it an orchestra?
Yeah, a Seal orchestra, yeah.
Oh, okay.
And it's totally amazing, even though we might have thought it was terrible. I was really looking for that Lalo Schifrin sound that Will and I are often looking for, which is a really thin. He used to mix it like in Dirty Harry. I think it's a kind of a polysynth or of some sort with muted trumpets in a cluster, and it's a sort of, it sounds like you've just put your arm on the keyboard and brought it up, you know, and
Right.
it's thin, and it has this thing, the Seal has a thing called harpsichord on it, you know, I think it is, and it's that sound, it's fantastic.
And you've got an EQ, haven't you, that you can kind
Yeah,
of
you can take-
savagely. Yeah, interesting.
It's a good bit of kit. I think they're great.
I mean, one thing when I was listening to the record, I was thinking, you know, it is actually, it's sort of fairly dark and kind of, you know, I mean, some people have said that Portishead stuff is dark. Portishead stuff is dark anyway. I mean, this seems to be another shade, even sort of darker, and also very psychedelic. There's a sort of, it reminded me of like the kind of Lou Reed kind of drug days and all that sort of thing. But you don't seem like you're kind of suffering from any sort of addictions.
At the moment, I'm not. Camper van addiction I've got at the moment.
How did you get there?
It was a dark world to make it. It always is when we enter the world of Portishead, really. Just through the frustration of trying to find tracks that are going to live in our world, you know, a sound world that we can live in, that isn't going to sound like old Portishead, but isn't going to sound like someone else. It's got to be us, but it's got to have moved along our road that we've always been on, you know. And at that time, we were frustrated by our lack of creativity, our lack of being able to write something that was worthwhile to us, really. Had a lot of stuff, but we discarded lots of it, and I remember at that time, you know, the world that we live in, and it has a bearing on everything. The world that we live in, just looking out this window, because we were in a lot of this time, me and Jeff, and the weather was grim, it was dark, and it was foul, and we didn't want to be doing that, you know, on days when it wasn't going very well, we didn't want to be doing it, you know. And
so it's quite a painful process.
Yeah, and then there would be, like, politically, what's been happening in this country for a long time has been pretty grim and sneaky and deconstructive and dull, really, for everybody, and depressing. And we talk about all those things all the time. So it wasn't a joyous world that we were living in when we made it.
But by the same token, I mean, some of the tracks, they sound like they're kind of not sort of hastily put together, but it's more about the vibe that was going, because, you know, you haven't gone for sort of rigid timing, you're not quantizing stuff, you're not doing any of that sort of thing, so it sounds like the kind of, maybe the initial spurt of energy was quite fast when you were actually doing it. Was it just...
No, it wasn't. Sometimes an idea might happen really quickly, but it's mostly laboured over, really. A lot of it is. We do splurge ideas down. We are very careful about not overloading things and having minimalism, because, you know, that layering, which works for lots of bands, doesn't work for us. You know, like, you think, what was that sound? Well, it's like 20 sounds all buried in there, you know, and you think, wow, that sounds fantastic, but it doesn't kind of work for us. It's got to be succinct, like the helicopter sound that we were talking about on the ARP. There's not much else in there, you know what I mean, apart from the, you know, there's no other kind of weirdy sounds going on.
Yeah, I mean, it is very minimal as well. I mean,
so that, and the price of that is that you have to deconstruct massively, and that's depressing at times, because you lose something that you really liked for the greater picture, in a way. And I think I might have to give you back to Granny.